Hi everybody, this is Algebra 1, Lesson 66, and this lesson covers simplification of radical expressions and square roots of larger numbers. Alright, so we already learned that when we're simplifying a radical expression, we can break down some of those expressions into something that's easier. So let's say that we had the square root of 50. We can break that down into the square root of 5. No, let's do 25. The square root of 25 times the square root of 2. And the square root of 25, we know that that is 5, because 5 times 5 is 25. So we can pull that out, and we can say that's 5 times the square root of 2. Okay, so when we simplify an expression like this, we're going to break down both of these. So 18, I could say, would be 9, square root of 9 times the square root of 2. Okay, and then our 8 right here could break down into square root of 4 times the square root of 2. Alright, so square root of 9 is 3, so it's going to be 3 times the square root of 2, plus the square root of 4, which is 2, times the square root of 2. And now we have like terms, and we can add those together, because we have square root of 2 and square root of 2. 3 plus 2 would be 5 times the square root of 2. That's the answer to that one. Alright, let's try another one. Alright, so for 27, we can break that down into 9 times 3, so square root of 9 times the square root of 3, which would be 3 times the square root of 3. So this one would be 3. Ooh, so we have an 8 right here. 8 times 3 times the square root of 3. 3 times 8 would be 24 times the square root of 3. So be careful when you have a coefficient on there already. Alright, 75, that would be the square root of 25 times the square root of 3. Square root of 25 is 5. 5 times the square root of 3. But don't forget about that coefficient. So it's 5 times 3, which would be 15 times the square root of 3. And that's a subtract negative right there. So we have 24 minus 15, which is going to be 9 times the square root of 3. Okay, so there's that one. So be careful when you have something that's like 8 times the square root of 27, and we break that down, and we say square root of 9 times the square root of 3. When we pull this 9 out, we still have an 8 right there. We pull that 9 out, and we say that the square root of 9 is 3. We have to multiply the 8 times the 3 to get 24 times the square root of 3 is our final answer. Alright, let's try another one. This one has a 27. That will be square root of 3 times the square root of 9 minus 3 times 18, which would be the square root of 18 would be 2 times the square root of 9. Okay, and then we've got this one, which will be minus 6 times the square root of 45. Let's see, 9 times 5 is 45. Alright, now we're going to pull these out. So that would be a 3 times the square root of 3. Square root of 9 is 3, so we got to multiply it times that 3. 3 times 3 is 9 times the square root of 2. And that one's going to be a 3, so we multiply it times the 6. 3 times 6 is 18 times the square root of 5. Alright, so on this one we have some that are like terms and then one that isn't. So square root of 3, oh no, we don't have any like terms actually. So this one's going to be, that's the final answer right there. There's nothing more we can do to that, because it doesn't have any more like terms. So sometimes we can't add them. Sometimes we'll not come up with like terms that we can add. Alright, square roots of larger numbers. When we're using powers of 10, we can, there's kind of a trick to that. So like, let's look for a pattern. So if we have 10 squared, that means 10 times 10. We're just going to double the number of zeros. That'll be 100. Okay. If we have 100 squared, that'd be 100 times 100. We're going to have 4 zeros. Okay, because we double the number of zeros. Here are 2, so now we've got 4. If we have 1,000, we're going to end up with, we have 3 zeros, we double that, and we get 6 zeros. Now, you'll notice this one has 2. We start off with 1, we double that, we get 2 zeros. This one has 2 zeros, we double that, we get 4. This one has 3 zeros, we double that, we get 6. Do you notice how they're always even numbers? Okay, so perfect squares that are powers of 10 always have an even number of zeros. So if we look at this one, simplify 50,000, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. So what would be half of 4? 2. So that means we have the square root of 5 times the square root of 10,000. And we can pull that, we can figure out how many that is by just chopping that number of zeros in half. So that would be times 100. So our answer would be 100 times the square root of 5. Let's try another one like that. All right, so first we're going to count the zeros. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can only pull off 4 of these. So we're going to say 50, the square root of 50, times the square root of, we're going to pull off 4. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 50 times the square root of 10,000. See, 1 0 stayed with that 5 right there. We said 50, and then we said 10,000 right there with those zeros. All right, now when we pull this one out, that's going to mean, let's see, we have 4 zeros, so we're going to cut it in half. We'll have 2 zeros, so the square root of 10,000 is 100. We did that, 100 times 100. See, 10,000. All right. So that means we can find the square root of that is 100 times the square root of 50. Now, we can break down the square root of 50 more. That would be 25 times the square root of 2. The square root of 25 is 5, but we have to multiply that times our 100. So we're going to end up with 500 times the square root of 2. Okay, this one, first thing we're going to do is we're going to count our zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so we have to have an even number. So we're going to pull down this 40 right here times the square root of half of this. Well, first we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then when we pull that out, we're going to have half of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See, we're counting all those zeros. We're going to use half of them, so that'd be 3 zeros. So 1, 2, 3 would be 1,000 times the square root of 40. And then the square root of 40, I can do square root of 10, keep our 1,000 here, times the square root of 4, and the square root of 4 is 2, so we multiply that times our 1,000, and we get 2,000 times the square root of 10. And that's the answer to that one. So this is a simple way to do very large numbers just by pulling off your zeros. All right, so this one, first thing we do is count our zeros, and we need an even number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have an even number, so we're going to say the square root of 7 times the square root of 1 with 8 zeros. Okay, and then we're going to cut off half of those when we pull it out of the square root. So if there's 8, that means we're going to have 4 zeros. So we're going to say 1, 1, 2, 3, 4 times the square root of 7. And that's our answer. We can't break 7 down anymore. So pause the video and work the practice problems, and then I'll work them for you. All right, so A, first thing we're going to do is just break down This 24, let's see, I could say 6 times 4, that would work. And square root of 4 is 2, so that'd be 2 times the square root of 6. All right, 48. We could say 6 times 8, 6 times 4, 4 times 12. 4 times the square root of 12. That would be 2. Yep, so we'd have 2 times the square root of 12. I think there's something else we can pull out of there. Let me think. This one we could say square root of 3 times square root of 4, which would be another 2. So we would have, let's see, let's start this one over. Alright, so we had 6 and 4, that would be 2. So we got 2 times the square root of 6. And then our 48, we could break that into 6 square root of 8, and that would break down into square root of 4 times the square root of 2, and that would be, yeah, it's going to be 2 times the square root of 12. Okay, and then that breaks down into square root of 3 times the square root of 4, and that would be another 2. So we pull that out and multiply it times that 2, and we would have 4 times the square root of 3. So we've got 2 times the square root of 6 plus 4 times the square root of 3, and we cannot put those together. That's as far as it'll go, so that's the answer for A. B, we're going to break down our 18 into square root of 9 times the square root of 2, and square root of 9 is 3. So 3 times 2 is 6 times the square root of 2. This one would be square root of 3 times the square root of 3 times 9. Pull that out and get a 3, so we'd say minus 3 times the square root of 3. Alright, and we can't break that down any further, so it's 6 times the square root of 2 minus 3 times the square root of 3, and that's the answer to that one. Alright, for this one, first we're going to count our zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we're just going to use these. So we're going to say square root of 50 times, and we're going to have 6 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then when we pull that out of there, we're going to get rid of half of those. So we're going to say 1, 2, 3 times the square root of 50. And then our 50 we can break down into, let's see, 25. And our 25 breaks down into 5, so we multiply that times 1,000. So you should have 5,000 times the square root of 2, and that's the answer to that one. Alright, that is it for the practice problems, and that's all for lesson